My original plan for today was to talk lore with you guys, but I'm going to push that video to tomorrow because I realize that Mondays are just better days for news and general discussion, and there are some hot topics I'd like to discuss in what is going to be a double feature video today. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about the current ban situation with Glad, and then we're going to wrap things up by talking about the state of free play and world events in Anthem, because I think it is the one area among many within Anthem's actual game design where BioWare is lacking transparency for the player, where there's not a clear delivery of what is happening, what the player can access, what they should be accessing. And I think as BioWare makes this huge push for free play as a big part of the endgame experience via these world events, there needs to be more clarity in how those situations, how those events are transmitted to the player via some sort of an in-game system. So while they've been very transparent in terms of their overall development process, Anthem is in a lot of ways a very non-transparent experience where the player is constantly left guessing, and the situations where the player should be enjoying some sort of discovery or a newfound enjoyment, they're not. They're just struggling to figure out the basic concepts of how the game works, whether it's in combat or in free play. So big discussion to have there, but let's get back to the whole ban situation with Glad. Now, as I'm recording this, maybe something has already been resolved and he's been unbanned. I know somebody from BioWare had reached out to him and there was a discussion going on, but that's the last I heard of it. The unfortunate reality is this. With games as a service, and this idea of you releasing a game that is constantly changing and constantly evolving, and just video games as a whole, there are going to be glitches. There are going to be in-game exploits via those glitches. And when you release a product that has as many problems as Anthem does, you should be expecting players to find those glitches and exploit them if possible to gain access to better loot more efficiently. This has been happening since the dawn of time in games like this, and banning the players is never the answer. We are not talking about third-party hacks here. We're not talking about third-party cheats. This is not someone bringing in an aimbot. This is not someone using an external service to manipulate the game's economy and to boost the amount of coins they have so they can buy all of the cosmetics and all the resources they could ever need. These are in-game glitches that are a byproduct of game development that need to be fixed by the developers. And banning a player, whether they're a streamer or not, that's irrelevant, is not the right path forward. Regardless of who Glad is, this is not the good decision for BioWare. This does not set a good image for people playing their game. And you have to ask yourself, I mean, are you just going to ban everyone who ever used that particular exploit, whoever used that particular glitch? Because it hasn't happened. You know, Glad was one of many people who posted about and used those particular glitches on stream, not to mention the dozens of people who were sharing that on forums. I mean, you'd have to ban thousands and thousands of players if you were actually going to ban everyone who used that. This isn't a case of real cheaters. You're not hunting down and attempting to eliminate all of the cheaters in your game. You're banning people who found a glitch in your game and made use of it. The real answer here is to just fix it. It's not to go after players. Whatever ban system you've going on that has made this decision is not a good one. Find real cheaters, ban them. Apex Legends is a PvP game, and they had a bug that allowed people to essentially hold the G key and like fly up into the air, do some crazy thing. It got fixed in 3 days. No one was banned. I mean, plain and simple, that's the way that needs to be looked at, in my opinion. You know, you could sit here and talk semantics all day long with what Glad did. It doesn't matter. Like, if somebody uses a glitch in a game that was discovered in-game, it just needs to be patched out. Take it as a note to say, okay, we got to fix that, and then call it a day. This idea that you're somehow protecting the end-game grind or that you're protecting the, the length of your experience is a silly thing that happens in game development far too often, where we see artificial padding. And to me, this is an attempt to preserve that. This concern for people getting access to too much loot too quickly is a silly thing, and that's it, really. I don't have much else to say about it other than he should be unbanned, and people in that situation should not be banned. Ban real cheaters. Don't ban people who use glitches that they found in your game that you ended up fixing in some cases anyway. Like, if they got, what's the big deal? They were already fixed. As far as I know, all the stuff he's used was fixed like a couple days ago, if not a week ago. Like, just let it go. So yeah, there's what I have to say about it. Let's move forward and talk about the current state of free play and world events in Anthem. Now, once again, as I said earlier, BioWare has been very transparent with the development process. You know, moving up to launch, all the live streams, that stuff's great. But Anthem is a game that lacks any real sense of direction a lot of the time, and a lot of people have been struggling with that. Now, you could say, oh, well, it's like a sense of exploration discovery. I'm sorry, but this isn't like Dark Souls. This is just a case of a lot of poor UI decisions, poor user experiences decisions. The lack of a tutorial for the combo system blows my mind. I adore this game. I love this game. If you're watching this video and you don't know me, I play Anthem every day. I stream it almost every day. I love Anthem. But to overlook these flaws would be doing the game a detriment. Like, it needs some sort of a tutorial. And this problem continues to exist as we go into all of the things happening in free play in the open world. Free play is an experience that BioWare very much wants to include in the end game. And I'm okay with that. I think there's a lot of potential in a big open world like Bastion to be a very exciting part of the end game experience. And I think it's an area that a lot of other loot shooters actually lack in. So I'd love to see them tackle that and come away better off than a lot of these other games. But right now there's just so little direction for the player. Like, yes, when I'm just out exploring, I want to just go out and explore. But there's only 4 players in free play, and it's damn near impossible to actually get up in a group with those players if they're not in a squad with you and complete events. So if a world event appears, because they generate randomly, by the way, as you enter area after area, there's a chance for a world event to appear. There's no timer system. People aren't going to be able to figure out where they might be. Just each little area has its own set of world events that could happen as the player enters that zone. So if I'm out and I stumble into an Ancient Ash Titan, like when I was doing the weekend featured event where we had to hunt down the 4 different Titans, Bane and War and etc., there's no way for me to let other people know that I'm fighting this Titan right now. And for a game that was pushed pre-launch and is now continuing to be pushed as this social experience, there's very little in the way of like social interaction tools. The idea that everybody's going to get on the mic and just start making calls is silly. You know, there needs to be some sort of a global warning system. I just think, honestly, when a world event procs on the map, when a player activates it, it should show up on the mini-map. But if you wanted to make it more specific, so maybe a player could solo those things when they feel like soloing those things, why not give us some form of a flare system? So if I'm fighting an Ash Titan, I can pop a flare, and that notification not only appears on the mini-map, but the other players in Bastion at that time get a vocal notification from Faye saying, Freelancer, a fellow freelancer is fighting an Ancient Ash Titan, they could need help. Like, this is just one of those things the game needs to have. The problem goes deeper into world events. When we talk about the featured world events, for example, the Outlaw one that had a named Outlaw, and then the 4 Ash Titans, there should be something beyond a posting inside of your challenges menu, which is buried deep behind 3 other menus in this point in the game, that actually exists in the launch bay as well as in Fort Tarsus. Some form of a contracts board, similar to what we see when we go to the individual faction leaders, should exist. It shouldn't just be like when you boot up the game, you get a tiny little like notification bar that says the Outlaw event is happening, and then that's the end of it. Because sometimes that system doesn't even work. I mean, the whole weekend the Ancient Ash Titan fights were going on, that didn't always show up. I thought it was over with on Saturday because it was no longer there. There needs to be a clear identification of what world events are happening, and I think they should be treated, to add a little bit more flavor to the experience, as actual freelancer jobs. So there should be a global notifications, a global contract board, if you will, in Fort Tarsus and in the launch bay that we as freelancers can go up to look at current jobs. Those world events, when they're featured, should be featured jobs on that board. While you're at it, why not make the rest of the contracts for the other faction leaders also available via this board? Walking around all of Fort Tarsus just to pick up legendary contracts every single week is a waste of player time. This idea that we're going to encourage players to interact with the NPCs via that system isn't true. People just skip through it. They run frustratedly from Yarrow to Bryn, back to Matthias. Just put it all on one board. Like, we're freelancers. The lore is that we're supposed to be picking up these jobs, right? We're supposed to be getting hazard pay for the dangerous ones. Put it on a board, put the world events on the board, let players walk up, let them see a bounty poster for this named Outlaw. I don't think anybody even knows who the hell the guy was. I never got a chance to find him. So I literally went an entire world event without even knowing who the big bad guy was supposed to be. That doesn't do much to boost the narrative of the open world and the characters that are supposed to exist in these other factions, when it could be doing so much. If there's a Dominion event that occurs in the next 2 months, let's say, and I've now got this contract, this bounty board for the freelancers for jobs, and I go up there and I see, ooh, Dominion Storm, Dominion Valkyrie, Lasha Naray, I don't know, I'm just making up crazy sci-fi names here. Wanted for murder for, multiple cases of murder of Arcanist or whatever, right? Like, that suddenly adds a character to the world. That gives me more purpose behind going out and doing these world events. the game just doesn't have that, you know? Like, if you want open world, if you want free play to be this big part of the end game experience, then you need to treat it with much more grandeur and a much higher level of presentation and detail. And that's where we get into the rate at which it looks like BioWare wants to introduce world events into the game. Some of the months that we have coming up have like 5+ world events. I like the idea of old world events returning, but what I like even more is the idea of old world events returning revamped and better than before. Like, I would rather have less is more in this case. Give us quality over quantity. I'd rather have 1 or 2 world events every single month that are far more fleshed out. The Ancient Ash Titan fight was a great example of a good world event that could have been even better had the 4 Titans actually had some sort of flavor, their own individual unique mechanic. Maybe one of them does ice damage, maybe one of them did fire damage, maybe one of them does acid damage, maybe one of them does electrical damage. You know, mix it up a little bit, give them different resistances. I would rather see that. That has more value to me than doing 5 events that are going to be just as low-key as the base version of the Ancient Ash Titan fight was every single month. This is very much a case of less is more for me personally, and adding that diversity across, you know, the different encounters we're going to have is going to go a long way. The same thing if we see the Outlaw event return, which looks like it's supposed to. Give us a new Outlaw, a new bounty on them, make sure that they're running a different chassis, maybe they're a Ranger-focused Javelin that they're in this time, and give them different resistances. Give them a little bit of personality, give them a little bit of background. I'm okay with BioWare chasing this dream of free play being a big part of the end game, but it needs to be treated with a much higher level of detail and, again, delivery if that's going to be the case. There needs to be a bigger warning system. The player needs to be pulled in to these activities as a serious activity far more than they currently are. There's my 2 cents on the whole subject. Again, I like a lot of what BioWare is doing here. I like the potential build-up that we might have had to the Saber Surge event that got delayed this past weekend. We're going to be talking about the Monument and lore tomorrow. They're doing cool things. I just don't think the delivery of those cool things is at the level it needs to be for players to really get as excited and as interested as BioWare probably wants them to be. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave any of your own personal thoughts down in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.